Lo distinto te ha encontrado. Esto es Infinita Podcast. Encuentra nuevos episodios cada semana. Suscríbete. DT Podcast. Comenzamos.
Bienvenidos a este nuevo episodio. Es un episodio súper especial, episodio número 51 del DT Podcast. Están escuchando Radio Infinita FM 100.1. Con nosotros tenemos desde Canadá a un amigo que hemos conocido recientemente y hemos platicado con él. Y bueno, estamos muy emocionados de tenerlo acá. A Bogdan Belomestnykh de Coinfield, y adicional también en cabina tenemos a Rafa de DT aquí en línea.
Hola.
El día de hoy pues estamos todos en casa. Este es el primer episodio que estamos haciendo desde la autocuarentena. Entonces disculpen ahí si hay algo con el sonido. Por favor escríbanos al WhatsApp ahorita les digo, se me olvida siempre, al 5741-1290, 5741-1290, nos pueden escribir si tienen cualquier pregunta. Pues el día de hoy estaremos platicando con Bogdan sobre sus orígenes y cómo llegó hoy a ser el Business Development Officer en Coinfield. Esta entrevista es en inglés, y espero se la disfruten tanto como nosotros. So Bogdan, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time and talking with us. We always start, with a small origin story. Like, when was it that you read Satoshi's white paper for the first time, came in contact with it for the first time, and really what motivated you to come into this space?
For sure, yeah. So my name is Bogdan, and I'm currently working, doing business development for Coinfield Exchange, and also a part of Sologenic team. Can you hear me well, by the way?
Perfectly.
Okay, and I've joined the industry just back in 2016, I'd say. I started to first sort of dipping my toe into this whole blockchain space and trying to learn more about the technology and the Bitcoin. So I've basically found out about it in my last year of university. Just had like a very sort of casual conversation with my professor, who'd been teaching me financial subjects like trading, capital markets, etc. And he basically told me about this technology that was sort of emerging on the sideline, and I got curious about it because I'd heard the word Bitcoin before back in 2013, and then afterwards, basically, it just flew into one ear and then flew out of another ear. But here in 2016, because I guess I had more understanding of finance and the business world, I think that clicked in my head better. And then so I sort of start looking into the Bitcoin white paper, reading different books, articles, and trying to basically find anything that I could, more information about it to basically get myself versed in this space.
Yeah, from what I can read, you have a very strong finance background. You worked at the Montreal Exchange.
Correct.
And how did you combine the whole new and digital financial system with your knowledge of finance at that time?
So the thing about it is that I was really initially had a big dream of becoming a financier somewhere in the United States. Probably wanted to be a hedge fund manager or a trader. That was my university, sort of speak, best case scenario when I was just joining. And so I was sort of considered myself as a financial geek. I try to learn a lot of sort of subjects around economy, finance, accounting, history of money, banking, and things like that. And so I started reading a lot, and I was doing a research project on the 2008 financial crisis. And right when I finished it, actually, I got into this whole conversation with my professor, and then started looking into Bitcoin, and it just, appeared to me that this whole system actually that is emerging, the blockchain, it's transparent, it's decentralized, it's censorship resistant, and it has all of the properties that would help us basically move to a newer financial system that is more distributed and it's more even. So I think that basically what it really clicked with me is also that just to say that that originally I'm from Kazakhstan, and sometimes people over there, like, they have currency crisis, like, I don't know, every 4 to 5 years, the currency being debased, and people lose about 20% of their savings, 20 to 25% of their savings overnight. And so having something like Bitcoin that is cannot be confiscated, cannot be seized, or cannot be just simply manipulated by the government is, I think, essential for a healthy society to operate, and people not being screwed by the government systems, something like that.
Well, that's a very, very interesting point. I see a lot of parallels with, well, not exactly. It's different. Actually, it's very different to Latin America, but it is similar at some point. I would like to go deeper in there. Like, how did you go from Kazakhstan to Canada? I believe you studied, right?
Oh, yes. So that's basically, it was I guess it was exactly due to these reasons of the fact that my family, particularly my father, he became really sort of fed up with the governmental regime over there, and decided to move to a new country and start a new life or a new chapter for himself. And so I was just basically there with him when he made that decision, and so we decided to move. It took us like basically some time to get everything ready, but finally we arrived, and that was like almost 10 years ago by now. So
wow.
I have been living here for the last 10 years, let's say.
Yeah, but you were already grown. Like, I mean, you felt the whole. You really understood the differences in the, in the societal.
It's a very
differentiators, big and yeah, because I grew up in. I was born here in Guatemala, and I grew up in Germany.
Exactly. So you have a really good understanding of, cultural differences, and also a lot of things that are similar. Because whenever you go around and travel more and work in different countries, you actually start to understand that people all care about the same thing, and that's just basically doing doing their work from day to day so that they can provide for their family, put food on the table, make sure they set aside some money so that they can basically save for the future and retirement. I think that's basically a lot of people, that's how they like to live, right? Based on what I've seen all around the world. And I think that when governments have levers and are able to manipulate the supply of money and basically essentially devalue the rest of the society that holds the money, or particularly that currency, I think it's very devastating for people, because you see that they're being impacted, and all of the other factors then start playing afterwards, like price increases due to the inflation and all kinds of other things. People, unemployment rate goes up, people lose jobs. So it basically, yeah. So so it's funny that we are making this podcast right now in this time where we have this whole global slowdown in the economy. And I think everyone is shocked to see how big of an impact we actually are seeing from this whole coronavirus situation unfolding.
Yeah, and it's exactly, I mean, they're putting into practice the only thing that they know, and the only way that the current governments know how to stimulate the economy is by injecting more money to it.
Which is exactly what they did, right?
yeah. So
unfortunately, it doesn't seem to help too much at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So, to stay on this segment with about your story and your origins. So, when did you decide, like, finance was the thing, because not many people thinking about money is and what is money, and how do you get into understanding all of this. It takes some time. Mostly it takes just the will to question yourself about what you're doing currently with it, and how can you be better with your money. So tell us a little bit about your story of how you decided to go into finance and all of this.
I was really curious about this whole concept of financial markets, trading, and the fact that some people can make tons of money, basically going into these trades and buying stocks and then selling them. And so when I was hearing that when I was at the age of, 9, 10, 11, that always sort of I could never understood how that can basically occur. And so then as I grew older, I think I've just started paying more attention to these things. And whenever so my dad, he was an entrepreneur. He started from nothing. And I also wanted to get involved in business rather than science or arts, for instance. I think because I had respect and foreseeing for how my father was operating and running his business and leading his team, and getting some partnerships. And so I really had a lot of respect for my father, and then so that made me sort of choose the business stream when I went into the school. And then I think that finance just made the word finance actually sounded a lot more attractive, and I think that a lot of people actually jumped on that train as well. When you go so first I started studying accounting, and then I switched to finance because I basically realized that accounting was about the numbers in the past, whereas the finance was more so about the numbers in the future. So it just seemed to me a lot more exciting and interesting.
Nice. Well, a good shout out to your dad there. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
So
he's really happy right now. Yeah.
So how? Yeah. Okay. So did you and well, talking about your dad, what does he think about crypto, and how did you manage that? Because I know for some people I think it's quite a generational thing. For us,
it is
halfway millennials. It just makes more sense to the others.
It is. So just to turn back to my dad a bit, right? So he was growing up in Soviet Union, right? So Kazakhstan was a part of Soviet Union, and basically when he was growing up and he was my age, the entrepreneurship and basically creating your business was illegal. So you couldn't possibly do it.
Wow.
So and then he basically started to he was working as an optician and for a company, for a government state or organization, and then basically started to become a bit more innovative, try to put out some ideas, and then they fired him. I think that one of the persons or something based on the story he told me didn't really like his enthusiasm too much. And so then he decided
I'm sorry, I have to break up because we have a pause right now, an ad break.
Sure.
But it's a great point to leave the story so that we can continue when we get back. Están escuchando Radio Infinita FM 100.1. Este es el DT Podcast Special Live Edition. Yeah. Don't worry, it's just an hour.
Oh, okay, sounds good.
Bienvenidos de regreso. Estamos en esta edición especial, Special Live Edition del DT Podcast número 51 con Bogdan Belomestnykh de Coinfield en Canadá. Y tanto Rafa como yo estamos en casa, o sea que este es un episodio desde el self-quarantine. Es un episodio en inglés, seguimos en inglés. So Bogdan, you were telling us a little bit about your origin stories and how at the end of your studies in finance you learned about Bitcoin, Satoshi's white paper, and you started reading into this.
Yes.
And we left the last segment with a very interesting story of your dad.
Father, in the Soviet Union regime. Yeah.
Exactly, and I think it's really interesting to understand the importance of playing fields. So please continue. Please continue.
Thank you. So yes, so my dad basically was being a hard worker in Soviet Union, and he wanted to do more for himself, I guess, get more for his family. So, and in the 80s, it just started to be allowed for people to start businesses for them of different kinds. So he went and he opened the first privately owned optical store in my home city in Almaty, which used to be like a former capital of Kazakhstan. So he opened the first private shop, and then I think he bought like all of the furniture, the inventory, etc., got all of the licenses in place, and was just about to start his business. So the first 2 weeks, people could come in and then they wouldn't buy anything, or they weren't even knowing what he was selling or something like that. So, but the problem was that after like 3 weeks or something like that, after he just opened, there was a guy from the military, like a high official, that came in and asked him to sell that essentially business to him so that he could give it to his wife for her birthday. To which question my dad said no, he's not going to do it, because he just opened it for himself and not looking to sell it to anyone at the moment. And so after he basically said so, his business got shut down after a week. So everything got taped, and he had to find a new spot because basically they took away his registration and licenses. So it was it was a disaster for my family, because my dad took a loan to get it all started. And just the fact that the government has that ability, or some people have that control, was not, I guess, something that he didn't like. So he was more of a free market proponent as my dad. And so he then went on and then opened another shop, and then that shop became successful, and he opened a second and a third, and then start growing these businesses. And so because my dad was doing and selling glasses for people, he would buy these glasses from elsewhere, from the US, from Europe, from all kinds of other countries. And so he would travel a lot, and he would be sending money back and forth between the countries, right? So he actually was always struggling with that particular function of sending money back and forth, because first of all, you'd have to pay a hefty fee of about 5 to 7%, or at 5 to 10% in some cases. And also the time that it takes for the money to be received by the other party. So I think that when I pitched him Bitcoin back in 2016, and I try to do my best to explain these things to him, that it's basically can be sent as easily as email, over any distance. People would receive it on the other side of the world just in a matter of like 3-4 minutes. He bought into it right away. And
boom!
So
awesome story.
And actually, my mom bought into it too. And I, back in 2016, got her some Bitcoins. She asked me, and I helped her to get some Bitcoins for herself too. So that was basically my first beginning of how it's all starting to be sort of
Bogdan,
built up for me.
Typically, when we have guests, we ask like, what was your like mind-blowing Bitcoin moment? Like, when did you take the red pill and like went through down the red?
I did. Yes, I did have that moment, like the epiphany mode. Yes.
Yes.
So
like, tell us about when, like, how that happened for you.
Okay, yeah. So that's again back to 2016. So I'm just finding more about this whole Bitcoin thing, right? And at that time, I was studying business and finishing my school on the east coast of Canada, in a province called Prince Edward Island. So I found a guy in Canada here who was involved in the industry, but he was based out of Vancouver in British Columbia. So that's on the west coast. That's on the other side of the country. So I found his phone number. So I tried to find or connect with people, but there weren't too many people, where I was living. So I had to find someone who would sort of try to point me or direct me point me in the right direction so that I can start my journey into this space. So I found his number on the internet. I called him up, and he was in Vancouver at the time. And I basically told him, you don't know me, but I found some information about you. I'm really interested in this industry. I know that you're doing some work in it. So I would really appreciate if we could meet for a coffee and then basically have a chat, I would be very happy and grateful if you could do that for me, basically. He told me, yes, sure, you could come into my office tomorrow. And I'm like on the other side of the country, staying in my university dormitory. And basically having this call, and I'm like, well, I thought that if it would say yes, I would come next week or something. And so essentially, I bought myself a ticket on the plane. I flew to meet him and then had a chat. And then he basically told me to come over to Toronto conference that was happening. I think it was Bitcoin, Bitcoin training, blockchain training conference held in Toronto. I think it was June 2016. And so he basically told me to come over there, and because there are going to be a lot of industry pioneers, and it's going to be a good event, so that would be the best way for me to sort of start, learning more about it and getting more connections in this space. So basically, following his advice, I came back to the province where I was studying and working, and then basically flew out to Toronto to visit that conference and participate in it. Like after it was June, so that was 2 months after I came back, I flew to Toronto. And then once I got there, I started meeting all of these, great people that were basically at the very beginning of this. People like Peter Todd, Andreas Antonopoulos, Vitalik, and basically a whole crew of them was there. And so I met with most of these people and just got so excited and passionate about it, because I've just started seeing how many smart people are working in this industry, right? And
wow, I mean, those are the real OGs there.
How excited all they are and passionate about this technology. And so I think that made me realize and sparked my interest so much more. So I remember, I think it was the first night of that conference where we went and we had an after show party, and that was held at the vault at the Bank of Canada, or previous Bank of Canada building, so the Central Bank of Canada. So we had a small party in the vault that they used to have and store all of these, foreign currencies, gold bars, and etc. And you go into that vault in the basement of that building, and then you see Bitcoin charts, Ethereum charts. It was super cool. So I came back.
That's pretty cool.
I came back to where I was studying, to my university, and just got blown up. So I think I haven't slept in 2 days. I had maybe had a total of 4 to 5 hours of sleep in those 2 days. Came back, was all of my friends start saying that my eyes look obsessed, that I became obsessed with this thing. And then I remember I went to a boardwalk, it's like a beach. So I went to that boardwalk and then started walking, and that was just the sunrise coming. It was right when I came back, and it just all started to make sense a lot more to me. I think basically the dots start connecting in my head, and I start seeing some sort of future, or having some vision that that it will basically change the whole financial systems of the world. And as I said, will connect people all around the world and make it a lot easier for people to engage in trade, and basically send value to each other. And maybe that sounds very simple in itself, but I think that there's going to be a lot more other consequences that will come out of it. Maybe the way to make government more accountable for for different things. Maybe having a more freer society where people, are not do not have as big of a gap between rich and poor. But I think that the potential is there, and I think that if we build the right tools, polish it with nice user interface, and move this technology and industry in the right direction, and sort of work together and not fight with each other, and sort of adopt narrative that we are doing the right thing. Maybe some of us would fail, but essentially what we are trying to do is to compete with, not between ourselves as projects or crypto businesses. We don't compete between ourselves, but we more so compete with the bigger banks or the bigger financial institutions. I think that's what, as far as I see it playing out.
I think this is an awesome epiphany story, Bogdan. I think we've all gone through this moment where it just blows our mind. It blows your mind, and you can sort of extrapolate to the future and see what's the
when your parents. Yes, true.
How can this transform society? And it's a very inspiring moment. Yeah, we've all gone through that.
And especially when your friends start thinking that you're crazy and basically ask you as to when you're gonna stop, when you're gonna shut up about this Bitcoin thing. And they don't say it because they're friends, but they, you could tell from their eyes for sure.
Great. So that was a great story. Now we're going to our next ad break. Están escuchando Radio Infinita FM 100.1. Este es el DT Podcast. Recuerden que nos pueden enviar sus preguntas a cabina al número 5741-1290. 5741-1290. Hasta la próxima.
Yeah, I think I thought about it yesterday, and I've looked around, and I've realized that I have never ever experienced anything like this in my entire life. And I asked my mom, and she said exactly the same thing. That the the hysteria.
I think we're live again. So we're back. Estamos de regreso. Este es el DT Podcast número 51, Special Live Edition. Y acaban de escuchar un perfecto inicio a este siguiente segmento, donde vamos a hablar pues de lo que está ocurriendo actualmente y cómo esto pues está afectando los mercados y la perspectiva de cómo también esto pues nos puede, o cómo podemos usar el tiempo que tenemos ahora para aprender más e involucrarnos más. So Bogdan, you were saying you've never, and I think we're right now living a historic moment. It's definitely something that has never happened before, and it's putting everything to test. Like our humanity in itself, it's being put to the test, because, well, it's up to us to really stop this or to do something about this, because it's pretty evident that this is a real case, a real first case like pandemia, and people are reacting in various different ways. Very different ways. The market specifically dropped like never before, and some say they will continue dropping. The central governments are taking, their positions on how to counteract, and it's basically by injecting more liquidity, as they say, into the economy, with this massive quantitative easing of right now. The U.S. just printed out $700 billion. And in Guatemala, since we're also, the quetzal is paired pretty much to the dollar, I'm sure we're injecting more money into the economy as well to keep it up. The economies in itself are slowing down, and suddenly we'll have to be at home. And what are we going to do to create more money? If our time equals our income, and our, if our income depends on us being somewhere, right now that thought and that idea is really being put to test, and people can actually counteract to that. So give us your take on it.
Yes, it's very interesting situation, Esteban. I am shocked, as I said, to see how what the circumstances are at the moment, and how much of an impact it had on the global economies all around the world. And as you said, right, the S&Ps are flying down, and all of the markets are in a free fall mode right now. Not just cryptocurrencies. Like last week, Bitcoin dropped by 40% in a day. That's like the worst, was considered one of the worst days in the last 7 years. But the traditional markets don't do any better. I mean, they drop like a staggering percentage. I don't know exactly, but I'm sure it's like already beyond like 15% for just this year. So it's very how to say, concerning to see that, for sure. And I think for a lot of people, they didn't even expect anything like that to their portfolio impacts. They might have heard about this virus, but nobody really thought that it's going to stop businesses or slow down businesses and commerce all around the world so far. Like, for instance, I went to downtown yesterday or a few days ago, and all of the shops, like, you could see only 5% of people on the streets. All of the shops are empty. You feel like if you go into some of them, you feel like you get a very personalized service because you're just the first or second or third customer in a day. So people are just staying home, they're not going out, not buying anything. So due to that, businesses are suffering because one person's spending is another person's income, right? So the all businesses are struggling. They're laying off employees. People hours are being cut down. So a lot of people, especially in Canada, will go and get assistance from the government. So that will put government pocketed pressure. And right, as you said, right, the Fed in the United States and the central bankers all around the world are busy injecting more capital, printing more money, or not even printing, just putting more digits on the screen, so to speak. And that doesn't do much at the moment. Like, as we've seen, that didn't really give any stabilization of the situation to the markets, at least. So I think they also cut the federal fund rate, so the interest rates are being cut down to, I think, 0.0 some percent. It's very interesting where we're heading. I expected Bitcoin to be more of a hedge to these types of shocks or global, concerning situations. But I think it's not there just yet. I think people don't realize how big of a value it has as a transactional currency to send back and forth and to keep doing commerce on a global scale. Definitely people who hold Bitcoin don't like the volatility when it drops and your number that you have on your screen is down 50%. Nobody likes that. So but there also another interesting thing about this whole the cryptocurrency markets as opposed to the traditional markets, right, is that they do not have any Fed that would inject more capital into the markets to stabilize them. They cannot close markets at 5 p.m. every day and have it closed for Saturday and Sunday. So that means basically that, to me at least, is that the impact for traditional markets could have been a lot bigger and worse if they didn't have these levers that they could use to sort of try to maneuver the situation. And levers like quantitative easing, the interest rates, private banks, etc.
Yeah, you put a great point there. I think when this whole thing started, the stock exchange closed for 15 minutes, and it was like, wait a minute, we kind of need to get a grip on the situation here, and then we'll get going.
Exactly.
Whilst crypto markets have been running 24 hours nonstop, and I think, or where do you see the importance in this? How do you think people are taking to it?
Well, like, for instance, here's another example. Like, for instance, I usually use money transfer services to send money over to my mother, for instance, back home. So whenever I do it, I do it through, either traditional banks or systems like Western Union, MoneyGram, TransferWise. So she is concerned right now if the banks over there will be still operating. And so I think that's actually a lot of other people also think that the banking system might be either slowing down quite a bit or shutting off. Like, the online transactions definitely will be happening, but who knows, like, for instance, if next week they would say that they'd have to shut down all of the branches for like 2 to 3 weeks, and no in-person service can be done. Everything has to be done online, or they would have to wait for 3 weeks. So I think that's concerning, and people, when they cannot move money back and forth, that can be very that can basically put them in a very bad position if you cannot receive money from someone and then you expect.
Yeah, and cash withdrawal limits. I think that's always the first thing they implement is they start to put limits to what you can withdraw from your account.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think that's a serious breach into your. It's your money, right?
Yeah. I was reading this news, this piece of news on like people from New York City, rich people from New York City, were going to quarantine themselves in the Hamptons, and the money, the banks over there were running out of cash. So people would take out like $30,000 cash, like spent on the quarantine, and so like the physical cash is still a limitation, and we're seeing the limitations right now as people are starting to like sort of go crazy and take out some money to have in hand. It becomes very hard to manage it.
It's very true, and in Canada there is a law. I think you cannot take more than $100,000 out of your bank per day. And I'm not talking about the ATM. I'm actually saying, like, for instance, if you come into the bank, made an appointment, and you have, like, let's say, $10 million in your savings account, and you want to take out, like, let's say, $2 million or something for whatever reasons, you're only allowed to take out $100,000 per day. So you have to do it in 20 days, or wait 20 days to get it done.
And why is that? Because the money's not there.
Well, essentially, yes. Yeah, well, because people don't really understand the fractional banking system. Like, first of all, I've learned about it in the economics class, but now I'm really curious as to why they had only one small paragraph, like, I don't know, 10 lines altogether about it.
Really?
Yes.
Maybe you could explain it to us a little bit right now in brief before we go to the next ad break.
For sure. So fractional banking, all of the banks basically work, all private banks work under the same principle all around the world, is that they have only a fraction of money in reserves, and the rest are being given out to people. So for instance, here's an example. Let's say I'm Bogdan coming into a bank here in Canada, and I want to put like money in a savings account. So I come, open an account, put let's say $100 into that account. And they tell me, okay, thank you, Bogdan, very much. Here's your statement. And in a year's time, whenever you come back after 12 months, you will get $1 back in interest. So that's 1% per year. You'll get $1 on your $100. I'm happy walking out of the bank saying, okay, thank you very much. Then Esteban comes in, comes through the door and applies in the same bank for the credit card, to have a credit card for $2,000. So they are basically, the banks are able to create that $2,000 credit card from the $100 deposit that I just made 10 minutes ago. So they make that $2,000 credit card and charge 19.99 interest rate to a person who carries it. And then they collect everything in the middle. So the $1,900 of difference never existed, just being created as digits on the screen, because they just need to have, like, for instance, 5% in reserves. They give out this $2,000 credit card and then charge 19.99% interest rate. I get back 1% on my $100 deposit, and everyone is walking around happy, basically, both the guy with the credit card and the guy with the deposit. So if put it into this perspective, a lot of people who I say this, they say that this sounds like a scam. But that is essentially how the fractional reserve banking works in a nutshell.
On that note, we were leaving for the ad break. Thanks for the explanation. That was very interesting, and it's important to understand this because, well, at the end, you know, you work for your money, and somebody just gets to blow it, expand it, and create more out of nothing from your efforts.
Yeah, one thing is to create value and get awarded for creating value, and a whole other thing is to adopt this rent-seeking behavior, where you're like a parasite sucking into the system and like basically squeezing out value out of it and not producing back anything back of the same return.
Exactly. Thank you. Well, so you're listening to DT Podcast Special Live Edition. This is Radio Infinita FM 100.1. Nos vamos a los anuncios.
Yeah, I think it's like here it's somewhat similar, a bit different but similar. Like I think it's
Bogdan, sorry, we're live. Okay, estamos cool. De regreso en el último segmento de este interesantísimo episodio número 51 del DT Podcast. Están escuchando Radio Infinita 100.1 y como siempre recuerden que nos pueden escribir a cabina al número 57 41 12 90. 57 41 12 90 si tienen alguna pregunta. Este es el último segmento. Hablamos de temas muy interesantes, de cómo pues funcionan los bancos, qué es lo que están haciendo actualmente en estos momentos de crisis para motivar a la economía. Y en este segmento pues vamos a hablar un poco de Coinfield. So Bogdan, let's use this segment to get a little bit into Coinfield. I think maybe you can tell us a bit of how, you know, this crisis or financial instability is or general economic shift that is happening right now. How has that reflected in Coinfield's business? Because there's an exchange. I think when there's things like this happening, that's actually when you're in the movement, in the gateway of all that movement. So I think it's an interesting position to be at.
So any exchange basically.
We should explain what Coinfield is.
Oh
yes, for sure. For sure. So yeah, let's start with Coinfield. Coinfield is a global exchange that is regulated and licensed. It's a centralized exchange. It's headquartered in EU, and basically right now operating in about 193 countries and provide service in those countries. They support fiat currencies like US dollar, Euro, Canadian dollar, Japanese yen, British pound, and United Arab dirham. And there's lots of interesting projects that are happening within the company, which I'll speak more in detail a bit later. But Coinfield has OTC trading desk for large purchases for over $50,000. The trading volume is about 20 to 25 million on average per day. Right now it's probably higher, as you said, due to these maximum activity days. So as an exchange, we make good money basically when the volatility is on the markets, because people either buying a lot or selling a lot in these days. As far as the business goes, to be honest with you, I think that our industry is not as much impacted by this coronavirus situation, because a lot of people are already working from all over the place in a distributed manner. So I still have the same number of meetings every day, if not more, basically, and doing more every day than, for instance, 2 weeks ago. So I don't think, as far as our business goes, we got any slowdown. We actually got a lot more active, as you said. So we're adding more cryptocurrencies to our exchange. There's a new project that we're very actively working on. It's called Sologenic, and I'll speak more about it in detail. But
that's super interesting.
But for instance, our customer support team, our compliance team are super busy right now, and unfortunately, yeah, everyone have to stay home right now. So they took all of the equipment, computers, and everyone is being sort of available and keep in touch with everyone, working from home, but still doing all of the work necessary, to get the deposits out, withdrawals processed, everything. Our operation has not been affected. So people who deposit money with Coinfield or want to make a withdrawal, it's all with the normal times, no delays, nothing like that.
And can people from, just to clarify, can people from Guatemala register there and access to digital assets through you?
I believe so, yes. We do have a good presence in Latin America, but let me just actually check on this as we speak on the website, because it's just hard for me to manage. They're adding more countries every time.
Yeah. I mean, the website is available, and I know you can create your user.
It is available, yes.
Right?
It is available. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So that's great for our listeners to understand. You can go to coinfield.com and check it out.
Yes, and also another interesting thing is that Coinfield just recently announced the franchisee program, and so we're basically having discussions with different teams around the world who want to become a franchisee partner for different regions. And so we actively look for good partners in Latin America as well. And so once we do strike a good partnership, we'll basically do a whole translation of our exchange into Spanish. We'll be adding more fiat pairs, like local fiat pairs, and we'll be providing more payment methods for the people for the ease of use.
Awesome. Well, awesome. So what has been your main focus, and how, because Coinfield is relatively young in this space, right?
Yeah, so we started 2017. That's when Coinfield was founded. And then the latest version, basically, that we are running on right now, or the version that we are running on right now, as far as the infrastructure goes, that has been, I think, basically upgraded in 2018. So.
And how many users do you have, more or less?
As of right now, it's about, so I think it was 210,000 or so users the year end of last year, 2019. Now it's probably closer to 250,000 users. A lot of people actually were attracted to the platform because of the Sologenic project and the IEO that was happening on Coinfield for that Solo.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think it's a really interesting point.
Thank you. So the project is basically is aiming to merge traditional markets with the cryptocurrency markets and do it in a hybrid-like fashion. So meaning that there are different components of this project that will basically try to do so or achieve this mission. One of them is the tokenization of financial assets, stocks and ETFs to begin with. So we'll be basically enabling tokenization of stocks and ETF products on Coinfield as well, so that people can have more diversified portfolio and not just have cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies, but also can have a tokenized Tesla or Apple shares in their portfolio, or even have some ETFs as well. Another thing is that we'll be issuing our own MasterCards for clientele, and those MasterCards will be connected to the exchange accounts. So people will be able to spend their fiat currencies or cryptocurrencies or even tokenized assets whenever they pay for the transactions anywhere, online or in retail settings. So let's say in your situation, you are in Guatemala, and let's say you're flying into Canada tomorrow, and you have an account with Coinfield where you can have your local currency, your and then other currencies as well as cryptocurrencies and tokenized assets. So you can simply diversify in between these assets And also, whenever you land, for instance, in Canada, you can select Canadian dollar to be used whenever you pay for transactions. So that it's going to work just as simple like a bank card. If you come back, let's say or you fly to Europe, you can just simply select some of your assets and then transfer them to euro, and then use that same card and pay in euros and not be subject to the foreign exchange fees.
Wow. Yeah. And I think just to clarify for our listeners, you don't have to also, to operate in this, you don't have to be exposed to the volatility of the crypto markets, because you can use stable coins as well.
Exactly. Very true.
Great. Wow. And how did you get into Coinfield? What would motivate you, and what motivates you most to work with that company?
So I was basically, I moved to Vancouver a few years ago and was trying to get into this blockchain industry. But in 2018, when I did that move.
Bueno, so we lost it. We're going back. Ya estamos por cerrar este episodio. Estuvo muy interesante. Yo creo que ahorita lo estamos agregando un momento para que diga sus últimas palabras. Hey, Bogdan. Okay, sorry, we lost you there for a moment.
No worries. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. So maybe you can give us your closing statement. Yeah.
For sure. Yes. So I'm sorry. Where did we actually stop with this?
we were talking about Coinfield.
We're talking about how I got into this industry. Yes. 2018, and how I got into Coinfield. So 2018, I moved to Vancouver, British Columbia, and I was trying to get myself a job in the blockchain space. Wasn't easy back then because of the bear market. So I started working for other companies doing marketing, business development, and then at some point, basically, I've noticed that Coinfield had an office here in Vancouver. And I knew that the exchange was quite reputable. I knew that they have a good team of people. So I basically started inquiring whether they have any openings or any opportunities for a person like me that doesn't have is not a developer, but more so like a business person with more with some tech understanding. So we've got together. They needed a business development person, and they got me on the board. And since that time, basically, I was juggling around all kinds of things and wearing many hats, being involved in things like corporate negotiations, corporate sales, working with the dev team when delivering products or services for other clients, helping out OTC desk, finding out new partnerships, event management, all kinds of things. And so it's still not stopping at the moment. For instance, for the Sologenic, I was responsible for getting the partnerships in place with vendors for the cards that are going to be issued for people. So it's never ending. There's always things on the go, and I never get bored, to be honest. And the work is like pretty much, I think that because I have a lot of passion for this space, because I feel like we're doing something different and exciting, and trying to build some new tools for people to use, that gives a lot of motivation. And so I'm really loving what I do. And so I'm always available for my clients, for my business partners, or any associates we have on a 24/7 basis. So even, for instance, this morning, I started my day like from 6 a.m. in the morning, having a call with the company from Asia. And that is not just today, that's basically every day like that.
Bueno, y disculpen, tuvimos ahí unos retos técnicos en la llamada. Dejamos a pobre Bogdan solito, pero Espero hayan disfrutado de este excelente episodio número 51 del DT Podcast. Fue una entrevista muy interesante donde recibimos muchos insights de la industria y por qué es importante pues repensar lo que pensamos que sabemos del dinero y ponerle atención a esta nueva economía financiera que está surgiendo. Entonces, les deseo todo lo mejor para esta cuarentena. Espero estén seguros en casa, cuiden de los más vulnerables, cuídense ustedes mismos y hasta la próxima semana. Hasta luego.
Lo distinto te ha encontrado. Esto es Infinita Podcast. Encuentra nuevos episodios cada semana. Suscríbete.